So Profitability Partners, we are a fractional CFO firm focused specifically within the home services space. We're focused on really three things. Firstly, profit optimization. You should be hitting roughly a 20% net margin. Most home services businesses, they're in the 5 to 12%. We help our clients get up to that 20% benchmark. Second is helping our clients grow. That first thing ties quite a bit into the second because you need money to grow. Getting your business retrenched to the point where you're starting off from a strong place, that 20% net, and then figuring out where to be investing your money. Having the visibility to make the right decisions, that's our second really key objective, and make sure that you're staying profitable as you're growing. The third area that we're focused on is exit preparation, making sure you can pass that QOE with no problems and you can get top multiple, top dollar during that sales process.
Today's episode is brought to you by one of our show partners, Upfrog.
Upfrog is the OG when it comes to pricing transparency online. They find system replacement leads through paid ads and have developed an entire system to drive those hard-to-find system replacement opportunities, nurture the leads, and book them into sold systems before your team arrives to help you grow your business.
Hey, I'm Krista with MarketStorm, and we work with home service companies across the country. Quick question. If another HVAC or plumbing company in your area starts influencing homeowners before they ever hit Google, who gets the first call? By the time someone searches plumber near me, they've already been researching the problem. We use AI to detect those early intent signals and put your brand in front of them. So when they do search, your name already feels familiar. Visit marketstorm.ai or text us at 213-575-5448.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You're listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett, sitting virtually next to my co-host, Joshua Crouch. And I'm excited today to talk about fractional CFO and finding some of that hidden money. Just in general, I'm excited to talk to Matthew and Raymond from Profitability Partners. Josh, got anything you want to add?
I'm now in year 7 of Relentless, and I didn't really appreciate this when I was in the trades because I've never really worked at a company that was above like a $4 or $5 million company, where we really had to dive deep into our numbers. And I'm now getting to the point, this is a problem not a problem, but it's something we have to look at because the numbers get harder and harder to look at and the numbers are much bigger. And we have departments and all these different things. And I think this is something that, and I know for one, I don't think we've had a lot of content about this on the show. So I'm excited to really get into this because there's going to be some examples and we're going to talk through some things about what numbers should we be looking at? Where can we squeeze more? Where can we, different things that these guys have seen through their time in the trades or working with trades companies. So I'm really excited to get into this and get into some examples to really help you guys understand what's going on. Cause this time of year when we're recording this, it's July. This is usually actually everyone's like, well, this is when I make the most money. It's also when you lose the most money because you're buying materials and you're just throwing stuff out there and you're just going 24/7.
Yep.
And then by the time your financials get done and it starts to slow down, you're like, where's all the money? Where'd it go? And I don't have any of it in my pocket. And everyone's like, so it's really exciting to have people like Matt and Raymond, to talk through this and help the rest of us out so we can all make some more money and keep some of it at home, which of course Uncle Sam starts to take. Maybe you guys have strategies on that too, because I'm sure people would like to hear about that too. But if you guys can introduce yourselves a little bit, I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions to go through, but if introduce yourselves and how Profitability Partners got started.
Yeah, absolutely. So Profitability Partners, we are a fractional CFO firm focused specifically within the home services space. Our primary industries that we cover are HVAC, plumbing, electric, and roofing businesses. And we work with companies from 5 million all the way to 30 million plus in revenue. We see that, within the home services industry, business owners face a consistent set of problems, but in different, combinations, whether it's gross profit, whether it's overhead, whether it's scaling, it's the same issues that come up, but different sets of issues for every business. So, for us, we're focused on really three things. Firstly, profit optimization. We generally say that within home services, you should be hitting roughly a 20% net margin. So we help our clients from wherever they are, 5%, 10%. To be honest, most home services businesses, they're in the 5 to 12% net range. get up to that 20% benchmark. Our second primary objective is helping our clients grow, right? And actually, that first thing ties quite a bit into the second, because you need money to grow. Growth, in the short term, typically compresses your margins. It doesn't increase your margins. So getting your business like retrenched to the point where you're starting off from a strong place, that 20% net, and then figuring out, where to be investing your money, right? Having the visibility to make the right decisions. That's our second, really key objective, and make sure that, you're staying profitable as you're growing, because, frankly, in this industry, like, these are cash flowing businesses. That's why P's, buying so much of these and loading it up with debt, is that, these businesses make cash. When you're growing, you shouldn't be, losing money as a starting point. And finally, the third area that we're focused on is exit preparation, making sure that, whether you're 1 year out for exit or 3 years out, that a buyer can run a very clean due diligence process. Typically a part of this is a quality of earnings report where they're going to go through your accounting, making sure you can pass that QOE with no problems, and you can get, top multiple, top dollar, during that sales process. Those are the three areas that, we're focused on. And, prior to doing this, Matthew and I, as well as our third business partner, we all come from the private equity world. Matthew, probably the most relevant, so I'll let him give the intro on, kind of himself, and I'll jump in after.
Actually, Raymond and I and our third partner, we go back, 7-8 years, at a private equity investment firm in the Tampa area, a wealthy family, family office for, a wealthy family in the area. They're like partners. From there, we kind of went our separate ways. So I joined the M&A team at Apex Service Partners. I'm sure a name a lot of your listeners have heard of. They're the largest consolidator in the home services space. They actually were in some recent headlines. Apollo, a massive private equity firm, actually put some money into Apex, and Apex got a $10 billion valuation from there. So they're doing well, and obviously kind of from really the highest echelons of the private equity world. They're continuing to pour money into the space. So really kind of a good place to be for the foreseeable future, I'd say. So essentially, Raymond and I, we spent a number of years kind of sitting on the other side of the table, essentially, kind of identifying targets to buy and kind of underwriting, saying, hey, they're doing X, Y, Z wrong. Will we buy them post-close? Here's what we can fix, and kind of realize that value. Essentially, profitability partners, we're trying to help our clients realize that value before a sale. So, if and when they do want to exit,
could you share some of the things when you're on the other side, what you look for in an undervalued business? Because private equity, there's only a couple ways to make money, right? You find an undervalued business and you buy it, you turn it into a more valuable business and you resell it, or you take one that is great in profit and you bundle it together with a bunch of other businesses to make get a much bigger buyer pool, like we saw with, was it Silas and some I can't remember the banks. There's so many acquisitions and stuff. Like one of those, it was like a $2 billion type deal. But what are those things that you guys saw when the private equity, like, hey, these things, we could easily flip this business because they're not doing this well, or whatever that looks like? What does that look like from the private equity side? 'Cause I think that's something a lot of contractors don't know until they get through this process. And they're like, I wish I would have known that, because they asked a lot about that and my multiple wasn't as great because I didn't know.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few different places you could start. Probably the most basic one is just looking at the margin of the company overall. So, I mean, Raymond mentioned kind of that 20% target. Generally, if you're not operating at that level, that's kind of the first indication that something somewhere is under optimized. Whether it's just kind of going down the list. Is it a gross profit issue? Compensation plans are wrong, so you're paying you guys too much, or maybe they aren't being productive enough. You're not charging enough because materials costs keep going up and your prices haven't kept pace with that. Or is it more of an overhead issue, like spending way too much on ads? Some instances you might not be spending enough if your team's not busy enough, or just have too many dollars going to admin types that aren't producing any revenue. So typically you can kind of start from the financially, kind of work your way list, line by line. I mean, Apex and really all these buyers, they kind of have what kind of their ideal P&L should look like, and they're going to go line by line. And if kind of a potential target isn't meeting kind of their benchmark, they're going to kind of roll out their playbook or kind of implement their best practices to try to hit that. But it does go beyond, just the financials, kind of getting into the operational side of things. There are a number of different benchmarks they'll run through there, kind of, thinking kind of starting from the top line, with the sales funnel, obviously, are the leads coming in, but then when the leads are coming in, is the team, booking enough calls at a high enough rate? When we get the technicians out there, are they closing at the appropriate percentage? So just kind of going up 2 and 3 levels deep in a number of areas of the business. The Apex is the world. They've bought some of these companies, and really, not just industry best practices, but they have their own proprietary data and, playbooks that they can roll out where, they can identify down to super granular detail, where these businesses are coming short. Hey, when, if we bought these guys and we ran an our way, here's how well they'd be doing, and, they can quantify how much that's worth.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
can't go by like rule of thumb for percentages, but sometime in this conversation, do you think you can tell us roughly, like rule of thumb, what the percentages should be for HVAC, plumbing, whatever? It doesn't matter which trade, but like gross profit percentages and stuff like that. Whenever they're doing, like I think about like install jobs versus service work, there should be a difference there. And what we've always been told is get 1% better than what you were yesterday. But like it'd be nice to know like a benchmark goal to target towards.
Absolutely. I mean, typically our benchmark, when it comes to home services, you're shooting for at least, 50% GP on a blended basis. Between the 3 trades, there are some slight differences. HVAC tends to be, a little bit lower than the others, just given how heavy install is and how heavy material costs are. But we'd say for like a good HVAC company, typically 50% GP blended is what we're looking for. Of course, we can get more granular than that, splitting it up between service and install. Install, we're typically talking, that's more material heavy, right? So 40% GP, whereas service, we're looking at closer to around 60%. I'd say like plumbing is kind of in the middle between HVAC and electric, a little lighter on materials depending on, where you are. But I'd say like plumbing companies typically can run like 55 to 60% GP. So a little higher than HVAC. And then we say like electric is typically the lightest on materials, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Matthew, on your side. But we see, electricians can, go slightly above, that 20% benchmark, just because of, how light the materials are and, how it's more focused on labor on that side.
Yeah, electrical and that GP side of things, they can range mid-60s up to 70 if they're really dialed in there.
Going back to what you were saying about the 1%, improving by the 1%. The nice thing about this industry is like, once you can figure out, what you're doing and you know exactly, what you need to fix, it's a lot of times it's like a lot more than 1%. It can be 10%, it can be 15%. And it's actually like a pretty quick fix, right? If you think about it, you change your price book, you change the compensation structure, those dollars fall, pretty quickly to the bottom line. And what we like to say specifically about this industry is knowing exactly what is wrong is actually more important specifically in this space, because for every problem that you see within this industry, someone somewhere has actually fixed it, which is really nice because you're running the same various combinations of the same business just in a bunch of different markets. Whereas you think of like,
But my market's different.
Company. Yeah,
My
exactly.
business
My
is
market,
different.
my market's different. My business is different. But by and large, that is true to some extent. We see that difference more so on the marketing side. But when it comes to pricing, when it comes to, commission, it's pretty apples to apples. From what we've seen. And again, you're running like the same, slightly different, but the same business model, just, in 100 different places, right? So someone has solved every problem that, you've encountered within your business at some point at some time.
Are there, so you guys have talked about, and I think most people know to this point because it's been talked about quite a bit, like 20% is kind of like a net margin number. That's like we'll call it for like what Tersh mentioned, rule of thumb. Do you guys have some other metrics as far like, because obviously people listening to this, they may look at their financials all the time. They may never look at them. We don't know necessarily who's listening and where they're at in their journey, because usually people that start businesses and they're young in their career, they don't P&L's like whatever. Could care less. Like it's not even on my radar, even though that should be. Is there obviously there's usually buckets. There's like the gross profit number, overhead, marketing is another one that typically generally there's a lot of rule of thumb on there. And then of course net margin. Are there some benchmarks that, if someone wanted to just, hey, I'm just going to go look at my P&L. I don't really know what I'm looking at, but I just need to look at some benchmarks. Just like, am I way off base here? Am I doing okay? Any ideas what those would be? And ideally, I don't know if you guys have it, but like by trade would be even better. But because obviously HVAC is very equipment heavy.
Sure. Yeah. I can kind of give you, kind of one level further breakdown by trade. So starting with HVAC, and before I dive into kind of the gross profit numbers breakdown, what's very important to make sure to make these numbers relevant is to make sure, like on the labor side of things, that the numbers are quote unquote fully loaded. So when you're looking at your direct labor, include the technicians, commissions for direct sales, but also include if any benefits the companies are offering, kind of the technician portion of the benefits, payroll taxes, 401k matches. A lot of times that just kind of gets lumped into overhead and sits below the gross profit line. So people think, hey, I heard 50% gross profit and it says I have 52, so I'm doing something right. But it's like, well, actually when you factor in payroll taxes, benefits, 401k match, you're actually sub 40. So making sure you're including everything you're supposed to into the direct cost for gross profit is step one.
Is that a big mistake you guys see where people have because you can have different line items, put them below gross profit, like, oh, my gross profit's great, but my net margin still isn't great because they have it in the wrong bucket essentially, or the wrong place on the P&L, the wrong general ledger. Is that pretty common when you guys start looking at
that's
P&Ls?
exactly that's exactly it. I mean, you hear about the situation so much, but it's like you're talking to your buddy like Bob the plumber, he's saying like, oh, I'm doing like 75% GP, but then he's missing like, we've had people situations where they're like missing their labor cost, for example, or they're it's just because their P&L is not laid out correctly. But it's just even when they're mentally running the numbers, like their costs that are kind of just missing. So, you're comparing apples to oranges, and, the goal here at the end of the day is to get to a true apples to apples comparison, which is that, that fully loaded, gross profit number that Matthew was
that's an
talking
issue
about.
when we're creating prices in our price book as well. Like,
Yes.
not dues and fully loaded labor rate. And then come out, you finish, like you've done a year and you're like, wait a minute, I did all the prices the way that I was supposed to in my price book. And then someone else looks at their price book and you're like, whoa, your numbers are way low. Like this
Well,
doesn't
my
make
favorite on that is the Facebook group post we see all the time. What is everyone charging for this? What is everybody's labor rate? What's your flat rate? Like it totally different markets for labor and everything else. And then they're basing their price off of something that's so unrelated, and they have to reverse engineer how to get the price. I mean, I remember, Tersh, we did those. That's where we met the war planning sessions of CEO Warrior, when we had it was like a 13 tab spreadsheet, and we had to bring all this data to figure out. The only purpose of this was to figure out our sold hour. And it was literally like this 3 or 4 hour exercise. And it was crazy long. I remember doing it sitting in
4 days,
in the
3
office, and it was mind blowing to figure out what that is, because a lot of times people have a labor rate and then they have a membership program, because we all know memberships and maintenance plans are important, and a lot of people have those. So we're giving discounts on a labor rate that's not even right. And then we're discounting below that rate, which, if you guys have listened to the show, this is for the listeners. If you guys listen to the show, Billy Stevens talked about this a long time ago with memberships, probably 2-3 years ago now, where you should have a labor rate, but then you should be adding 15 to 20% to discount it back to the actual labor rate that you need to make 20% margin. I think the mistake is a lot of people, oh, my sold hour rate is 300. I'm going to discount off of that. And they don't. Now they sell 1,000 memberships and everybody's getting a 20% discount on parts and everything else. And they're actually hurting their margin, and it's hurting their business overall. It's really fascinating because there's so many ways to go about putting that price together. And there's so many mistakes that can be made because we want to be nice to our customers, or we want to be nice to our technicians and pay them extra to keep them, especially in a market where it's hard to find good people. So, and I'm sure you guys see some of that stuff a lot. Is there other like common things you see when it comes to the pricing side of things that people are making just some really gigantic mistakes that they just don't even maybe realize?
I was going to say, yeah, the discounting that you mentioned is definitely one. And I mean, a lot of times it can come down to us, hey, leads are kind of hard to come by, but we don't want to let this one slip through the cracks. They kind of, just kind of give away the farm to get a deal done. But the problem is, that's generally not done. You tell yourself it's going to be done one time, but your comfort advisor, your sales tech, they get too reliant on it. It's like they can't sell anything unless it's discounted by 20%. I mean, a lot of times we found that the owners are better off just kind of, letting some leads slip through, not getting sales closed, but actually, kind of sticking to the full price book, and even just, upping the ad spend a little bit. I mean, a lot of times you're better off, spending 2 to 3% more of revenue on ads and not discounting 10 to 15% to get the sale done, kind of, you're making an extra 70%.
One time, this comfort specialist I hired in, and he was like, okay, so what's the discounted price book? I was like, what do you mean with the discounted price book? He was like, well, I need the regular price book, but I need the discounted price book too. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, I discount on every job I go on. And I'm like, goodbye. Like, I can't handle that.
I understand like the psychology of that, but like that it would be almost like to the Billy Stevens thing is like, okay, now I got to mark it up 15 to 20%, and then I can discount back to the actual price I need.
Yeah,
to
that's
get a 20% margin, but
that's used car salesman tactics there.
Yeah, it does feel slimy a little if that's the only way he can sell.
Yeah. No thanks. That tells me you're not a good
yeah. And honestly, you think about just how the numbers work and how the return on ad spend works in this industry versus kind of other industries, right? I mean, typically, another one that benchmarks we typically think about is like, average market, we typically say 10% of revenue on marketing, right? I think that's a pretty, quoted
top line revenue,
quoted number, of top line revenue. But you think about it, like you offer like a 10% discount to your customer, your GP is only, 50% on a normal basis. Your material cost doesn't change on the job. Your labor may change a little bit depending on if you're paying, performance. But your costs largely stay the same. So you're giving up like, if you're doing 50% profit, that 10% discount is really decreasing your GP by 20%. But then you think about it compared to marketing spend, if you're spending 10%, like that money is better used just running the ads up. So you get, you're getting more calls and you're getting more, opportunities in the first place than it is to do the discount. Cause on the marketing side, we might be talking about a couple percent, whereas, you're giving up, 10% net.
So what I'm hearing Raymond say here is that rather than give discounts, you should call Josh and tell him to spend more money.
Exactly.
As long as we're spending efficiently. And then typically what we're going to do is we're going to look at your booking rate and be like, you shouldn't spend money until you fix this because it's like a weighted scale, right? Like if you go spend more money and you book at 45, 50%, which is a lot more of the average in the industry than people even realize, you book at like 50%. That's a lot of waste too. Like, and it literally pains me, my insides to see people waste that money and not fix the core problem, which is every lead that comes in needs to get booked, or at least have a process. Like, let's say they have a pricing objection. What do? Maybe we talk to the general manager, and I'm doing air quotes here for those who are listening. We talk to the general manager to get a free service call or a free estimate to get out there because we paid for that opportunity. If we're paying 10% of our entire revenue, if we're a $10 million company, it's $1 million a year. Those opportunities come in, we have to do something with them. We have to book them, or we have to follow up with them. We have to be so diligent on that. And so many people look at I need more leads. I need more calls. And we've talked about this before, but you're just going to get more. And it's like, it's just like sand slipping through your fingers. Like it's like having an open hand and putting sand through. You're only going to have so much sitting here. All the sand's going to slip through your fingers, and you're going to be like, why don't I have more sand? It doesn't make sense. Where did it all go? And it's so frustrating because it's such an epidemic for the trades because there's so many places to lose opportunity, and booking is the number one place where those get lost. Then you go into tech conversion rate, then you go to the average ticket, you go all down all these different metrics. And so I love when people say spend more money, but then I also am like, I've talked people out of spending money on pay-per-click and stuff because I see their booking rate and I'm like, you're not ready for it. You're literally just gonna like it's taking a lighter, some $100 bills, and you're just gonna light it on fire. And it's frustrating to see. And that's why I like that you guys said that you not only look at numbers, but you go deeper into the P&L, like the operation of the business, because the operation is so overlooked. And that's why these guys like the Tommy Mellos of the world and some of these guys, that's why they're so good. And that's why they're so profitable. Their operation is the focus every single day. They come in, they don't focus on other things. They focus on operation. What's our booking rate? What's this? Those are the numbers that they focus on every day. So I love that you guys brought that up earlier in the episode, because it's there's a certain influencer that sold his company in California. It's like, oh, you just got to spend 12 to 15% of marketing. Like, it's not that simple. You can't just tell people that, because people that are $1 million are going to go spend $120,000, $150,000. They're going to have nothing left at the end of the year because they don't know what they're doing. And it's a challenging thing to put that out there.
Hello, home service professionals. Do you want to maximize your marketing budget? Then you need to be using call tracking from CallRail. Let's say you noticed a spike in new leads this month. To find out what's driving them, you just log into your CallRail dashboard. Is my new Facebook ad outperforming my other ads? Or is paid search knocking it out of the park? Or maybe it's time to retire those newspaper ads. Since CallRail assigns a unique phone number to each of my marketing efforts, I know where my best leads come from and which efforts to scrap. CallRail shows you your most cost-effective marketing channels so you can get back to business. Go to callrail.com/SBMpod and try it for free.
Quick question. How many calls did you miss last month? Not how many you answered, how many did you miss? Across the home services industry, about 30% of inbound calls go unanswered. And those aren't just tire kickers. Those are customers ready to give their business to whoever books first. Breezy fixes that with AI agents that answer every call, they book the jobs for you, and they follow up instantly. So instead of waking up to missed calls, wake up to book jobs. If you want to see how many jobs you're losing right now, go to getbreezyapp.com, use code SBM, and they'll give you $500 towards Breezy on us. Now back to the episode.
Real quick, let me ask you, you mentioned earlier in the episode that their companies, like the average, is sitting somewhere around 5-10% net profit versus like the 20% that you're targeting. What's the difference in the companies that are doing, 5 to 12% net versus the ones that are doing 20%?
In terms of where the issues typically come from, right? It's a function, firstly of, are they pricing right? Are they paying their guys right in terms of how they're structuring compensation? We like to promote like commission first culture, just because it drives, it drives for shops above a certain size. That performance base is really important. It also drives just, kind of the attitude people come to work. And those are the things that come, into that gross profit. The second part is like overhead. Some guys, they run pretty heavy on overhead. They like to hire in advance. Sometimes they're spending on things that they really don't need to be. And then third, I'd say is, this is kind of, Josh, is more in your territory, but market competition. So if you're in a very competitive market, we've seen guys running up to, 15% marketing spend. And, you have the big private equity guys in the space. Sometimes that's what they need to be doing. But the thing is, even if you're in a very competitive space, you can still hit like 15, the marketing is actually like a small dollar percentage. You think about it, you're, on average, you're doing 10%, your blended ROAS across the company is like a 10x, right? So, even if you're 15, you can still hit if you're at a 15% marketing spend, you still have the potential to get up to 15% net. The difference primarily between the guys at 5 to 10 versus the full 20 is like, do they actually know they're at 5 to 10 versus the guys that are running at the 20? The guys that are
Like
running
a
at the
true
20,
5
they
to
know
10, not, like where the numbers, the P&L is actually correct and set up the proper way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that leads me into another question for you, Raymond and Matthew. that is when you go in somewhere and you talking to them about the pay structure, and they're like, well, what do I need to use? What do I need to, how do I need to pay in order to be more profitable? And you mentioned commission pay or performance pay, and they swap over to that. Have you seen tons of pushback? How do they handle that? Because I personally have changed the pay structure, and immediately the guys were like, oh, you're trying to screw us over. And then in reality, they actually ended up making more money, but they immediately had their guard up. And I was like, what in the hell? Like, I'm just trying to help you.
I'll take this one. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So, I mean, like Raymond mentioned kind of a preference for commissions. I mean, it's rarely all or nothing. So, I mean, just like the predominant, like number of techs will be commission based, guys are like maintenance calls or have to go back up warranties. Obviously they have to, kind of get some flat pay or hourly there. And generally there's kind of a win-win scenario where you can just walk them through the math and say, hey, we know you can hit, we have this target for you based on what you've done in the past. We know you can hit, if you switch from this hourly rate to commission, like you mentioned, Tersh, it's like you'll actually be making more.
In reality, there are some technicians who are just milking the clock. Like, you call it what it is. They're just there to get.
Correct. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, easier said than done. Given it's hard to find technicians in the market, but I mean, if they're not going to go for it, then you can kind of basically give them the leads that aren't as good and probably aren't going to pay. But the guys who are hungry and want to perform, that's when we kind of start doing the right tech, right call, and that they get the good calls if they want to work, and they don't get paid if they don't produce. So
exactly, and it clears the problem of information asymmetry, right? Because the nice thing is, like, the guy who knows he's gonna kill it at sales, he's he hears about, hey, I'm gonna get X% commission, bring it on, right? I love it. Whereas the guy who's not so great at sales, like, it's not gonna be favorable, for him. But then this question is like, do you want to keep that guy around anyways, right? If you can get a good commission structure, like, yeah, all the guys who are really good at sales, they're gonna want to come work for your company because they know they're going to be able to make more.
Well, and I think the bigger point of what the reason, because commission pay or performance pay, a lot of the, call them leaders in the space, the ones that are people everyone knows, talk about it, is because if you sell $1,000 job, exactly what your labor is going to be on that $1,000 job. That is how because the hourly, like I've had these jobs that, Tersh, I know you know this because you text me when you have these jobs that just harder than hell to figure out, and you're on an hourly, and it's like you thought it was a 2-hour job, you booked it for a 2-hour job, it's priced for a 2-hour job, it takes 6 hours.
Yep.
And now your margins are screwed for that job, and that can compound really quickly with 5 techs, 10 techs, 15 techs. All of a sudden you multiply that problem very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with commission pay and performance pay, whatever you want to call it, it's to reward people that do the things and going to grow the company, but it's also to make sure what your labor rate is in the trades. And I think that's almost the bigger piece, because sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to go to that because I don't want to be known as a sales only company, like the white shirts. That's like the term that people use in the trades. And it's also to know your labor costs and keep the labor costs at a level that it's always at. So it is, from a business perspective, a smart play to at least consider some sort of hybrid system that maybe is the best of both worlds. There's a lot of pay systems out there. You can get really lost and it can get really complicated really quickly. I would recommend keeping it simple, as simple as possible, because I've also texted Tersh when he's doing payroll and he spends 6 hours doing payroll because it's complicated. And just trying to figure out all this math and all these other things. And it's just, you don't want to do that if you can help it. But sometimes the way you pay your guys and the way you have it set up, it is a hard transition from experience to transition people to spiffs and commissions and things. Cause then they're like, this is changing and they don't like change.
Absolutely. And, to reinforce your point here, I mean, the variability is very important. Especially given just like, this isn't a super high margin industry if you think about it, right? People are running 5, 10, 20% usually, the best run guys. So if you have like some kind of like fixed compensation, you think about it, like for HVAC, for example, your revenue goes up and down with the seasonality. If you can't flex your costs up or down as well, you can get underwater very quickly, right? So that's the
You
important
mean by
part.
that? Flexing your cost.
When I say no, when I say flexing your costs, I mean, if you're let's say you're a business, you're doing, normally like 2 million a month. You go into slow season, you're doing 1 million, right? Let's
Yeah.
say you're doing only 20% net on your standard month at on that $2 million month. You know, if your costs are fixed, you go underwater very quickly as your revenue shrinks, right? So on that 2 million at 20%, you're doing 400K profit. You think about it, like if you drop to like 1.6 million, 1.5 million, imagine just all your costs are fixed. You're already going from making 20% to zero, and then very quickly you're losing money. So just the idea of like flexing your costs up and down and being able to do that very quickly, I think that's a really underestimated, part of being able to run the business. I think this is where a lot of people they get burned, is they run up on fixed costs like overhead, things like that. They're growing really quickly and then they have a slowdown, right? They have a bad year, that's when they really get burned, and they start taking on debt. They have to
You're
shut
on a
down the shop.
3-year contract with something and you can't get out of it, and you're like, oh yeah,
We all know who those people are.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, because we're talking about scaling and fixed costs, and obviously, Raymond, I don't know if you guys know this, we talk about AI and automation a lot. Tersh and I were like when Zapier was much smaller than it is, we were on Zapier 7-8 years ago, building automations that weren't even that good now that we have AI. But are you guys seeing, especially since you guys work with companies that you said 5 to 30 million, obviously a lot of those probably have some sort of budget for AI tools or things like that. Is that coming into play? Are you guys seeing that come into play? What are contractors doing if they are going that route? Like, what are they trying to optimize? What are they trying to, what levers are they trying to pull with AI that maybe they couldn't have done 3 years ago?
I'd say the most prominent use of AI that we typically see comes from just call center support. And
Okay.
I mean, we've seen some people honestly take it too far where they have AI, taking a lot of phone calls. We've seen it pretty consistently that if you just have a well-trained human, that the book rate is at least going to be 20% higher. Just kind of recommend that the AI call taking kind of sticks to after hours. To be honest, so in terms of utilizing AI in other parts of the business, really it starts with making sure the team's kind of using the software, typically ServiceTitan, and just using that correctly before kind of feeding AI to some of this stuff can be, of a significant amount of use. I mean, from our end, we can, leverage it to expedite things on the back end in terms of, bookkeeping and accounting and things like that. Those are really kind of the main areas that we typically see to date in terms of automation. Raymond, you want to add anything to that there?
Yeah, Matthew is exactly right. I mean, to date, the applications we've seen have been in those areas. Like for example, ServiceTitan, they launched like ServiceTitan Max or something like that. We haven't tried it out yet, but I think people are still in the phase where they're like building stuff with the AI, and it's gonna take some time for everything to come to market. People need to test it, because at the end of the day, like this stuff has to be better than what you're doing right now. Especially you think about some of these very high leverage. You think about these high leverage areas, right? Like if it hurts your conversion rate and maybe it saves you like 5-10 grand per month, the impact on the conversion rate is going to be a lot more material in terms of, your revenue and, the amount of profit that associated revenue is bringing in, than whatever you're saving on, your fixed costs, as an example.
You mentioned earlier that when you see some companies have, you might not have said it's exactly like this, but they basically have signed up for too many programs or too many softwares or whatever. What's the most common thing that you're seeing people have signed up for that they didn't really need? Or is there
honestly,
a commonality between it?
That's a very good question. A situation we worked through very recently, it's actually not software, it's not programs, it's real estate. And in particular, real estate leases. Getting, a lease, they're growing really fast, and they're like, oh, I need, I I have 5,000 square feet now. I need 30,000 square feet based on how we're growing. I got to sign up 2 years, 3 years in advance. I mean, also sometimes too, you see they sign multi-year leases because they're like, I'm gonna lock in what I got, right? But that's a classic example of an issue where you're putting like the cart in front of the horse. And that's actually, one of the most common problems we see are people who are scaling super fast and their margins are absolutely atrocious. Like they're not making money, because they're just signing up left and right for different things. And they're
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, I need to grow, I need to do this.
You're anticipating.
Really, you're anticipating the growth, something that's, has not materialized yet. And you have to keep in mind, like, even though this is a very resilient industry, everything's, we got install driven cycles, right? This is a consumer need, not really necessarily even a want. The market
Oh, it's a
does.
need. I just came
Yeah.
back from Italy the last 10 days. It is a need. It's a need actually in
Yeah.
all parts of the world. So if anyone from Italy is watching this, y'all need to get some damn air conditioning in your buildings because it's hard to sleep.
Yeah,
They have air
that's
conditioning in the
mine.
hotels, but this does not work like it does here. So that was like the first thing I noticed. I came in my house when I got back. I'm like, oh God, thank you. It's 75 degrees. And we usually leave it a little warmer during the day because it's so hot here in Arizona. I'm like, 75 feels freaking amazing compared to what we had over in Italy.
Yeah, that's my next business idea is European HVAC business because no one's got AC. I hope no one steals my idea. I shouldn't say it live, but that's my next
Be
opportunity.
grateful
Yeah.
you live in the USA. I will say that. Like, if you've never gone overseas, you probably don't understand. Like, you will understand very quickly. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not like this everywhere.
And good timing with the 250th anniversary of America.
Before we start wrapping up here, you guys, I'm not going to mention any client names because we have them in our notes, but there was one story in particular. I just figured it would be worth kind of, if you guys can maybe go into like some changes that were made. There was a company that, in a period of like within about 6 months had cut about $3 million in annual costs after you guys had started working with them. What does that look like from an engagement perspective? Like what kind of, maybe there's some examples of different things that are different areas that you guys found waste or ways they could optimize it better. What did that look like when you guys went through that with that client of yours?
Yeah, so this was a classic example of a company that, I just hit consistent growth year after year. These guys, they're one of the largest independent plumbing companies, but the business owner, they'd been growing 8 years back to back. Essentially what happened was, they had some trouble within their financial operations. They had a CFO before who got fired, and they didn't really fully know exactly where they were with the business. And the thing is, like, as
was
they
there
were
something he was feeling that like made him reach out? Like, was there something he's like, something just doesn't feel right? And that's why
actually this is an example actually of the guys in the 5 to 10% range. They don't know that they're in the 5 to 10%, which is funny. And the thing is, he didn't, he kind of knew, but the thing is, because they were growing on a cash flow basis, that growth actually helped support them because, a lot of times people collect
like
upfront
cover up, you're
deposits.
saying like covered up the issues that they weren't as profitable as.
Exactly. It covered up the issue. And the funny thing is, like, they collect, 50% up front, right? So the thing is, as long as you grow, you're essentially financing your business with upfront deposits for work that you haven't done, you haven't completed yet. So you're getting financing essentially from your customers, which was kind of the funny situation. So they're always able to pay the bills. And then as soon as things slowed down a little bit, then it all really hit at once is the thing. And then, like I said, like they were in a situation where they didn't really know what was going on. And actually now is a good time for me to shout out SF&P, who got us connected with them. What happened was, like, we were looking through their numbers. Once we looked through their numbers, we realized like how little profit the business was essentially generating. And then from there, we just dug in and just like was trying to understand like what is going on here, right? Like why is the business not making profit? And the nice thing about them was like their GP was always pretty good. They're very good about, pricing discipline. They're running pretty much full commission. So GP was never really an issue. It was purely like an overhead issue. They were running a ton of overhead. They were having the problem with the real estate that I mentioned earlier. They signed up for a huge facility. I'm talking like mid double digit thousands, 50 to 60K range per month on a lease. So so it's like stuff like that you can cut down. But we were able to, look at their phone bills, their softwares, their real estate, get rid of some of, these locations. They had some satellite locations they use for marketing, for example, really trimmed so much fat. It was like, we trimmed like maybe a third to like 40% of their overhead. And the thing is and that added up to, $3 million a year, essentially at their scale. And the thing is with this is like, it didn't really impact the business fundamentally at all.
So these are things that didn't really impact their operations. What you're saying, like
exactly.
$1 million is a lot of money.
It didn't really you think so, but there's actually a lot more at the ground level for your business to function. There really are just a few things that you need, like at the end of the day, if you think about it. And really what it is identifying, okay, what are the mission critical things I literally like? I need a truck so my guy can get to work, right?
Yep.
But beyond that, like there are certain things I don't need.
Personally,
And,
Raymond, I
you
think
know,
you need hundreds of software tools. That's just my experience. The more software tools, the better. Because then it's
Yeah.
something new and shiny to play with. Or
Exactly,
we sign up
right?
for it and we never use it because we think we're going to use it in the future, and then it just sits there, collects
Yeah,
them.
it sounds really good on paper. But it's not something that you really need at the end of the day. And part of it is just going through line by line, thinking about, all right, if I got rid of this, is my business still going to work tomorrow?
When you
And I
say
think
line
it's-
by line, you're not just talking about the P&L, like the initial P&L statement. You're talking about digging into each line within each line.
And every transaction.
That is
Every-
exactly what we did. We went through a single month. We went through every single transaction. We looked at every person that was working at the company to figure out, okay, what are they doing? Like, do we just need this right now? Right. And the thing is, like, that exercise just forces you really to think about like what you're paying for, what you actually need to run the business. And like, to be honest, like for most people, there is at least a few percent that they can cut out of their company, which, again, when you're talking about you're running at 5% net, a 3% gain on 5% is a 60% increase in your profits, right? And then the last component of this is like, for people who are eventually thinking about exiting, we're talking about private equity. We're talking about, the multiples they're paying now. That market's picking up, but, people are selling their business for 10x, 12x, 8x, right? You save, 3%. That EBITDA, let's say you save like, even like 200K on your expenses, that's getting multiplied by 10x at sale. And that's going to get you $2 million extra, at the exit, right? So like that,
I guess all those
you know,
softwares aren't that valuable.
yeah, exactly.
I'd rather
Like
have
you're-
the $2 million.
yeah. So, that fundamentally, I think, once you think about it that way, it fundamentally reframes how you think about it, but also just shows like the value of the opportunity that, a majority of I really say like 80+% of contractors have within their business. Cause it's not just about, like it is nice to get that cash in today. And that the thing is that cash is what's going to allow you to grow long-term. But it's also like, once you pull the trigger, on that exit, there's just so many more dollars just falling into your pocket. And, even you think of like 5%, right? Like just because the percentages on the net are so small, you're going from 5 to 15% just mathematically, you're literally tripling how much money you're making. And then you multiply that again by 10x. And the thing within this business is like, this happens throughout the company. Like you even think about bringing in the leads, right? Like how much business you're doing. It's a function of your cost per lead times your book rate times your conversion rate, right? You get your book rate up 10%, you get your conversion rate up 10%. That's a multiplicative effect. Same way when it comes to, that profit optimization and, that exit multiple as well.
Yeah, and that's what Tersh and I talked about that stuff a lot. I think I've even built like one of the first the vibe coding tools. One of the first tools I built was like a tool to like put your booking rate in, put your conversion rate, put your average ticket, and then like, hey, if we increase it 5% here, 5% here, 5% here, what is the multiplier? What is the actual true impact without getting any more leads, without paying any more people? You get like another several hundred. I did an example of like a $5 million company. I don't remember all the numbers now because it was like 2 years ago I did this, but it changes fast when you look at
Yeah,
those,
it's
when you
like
just tweak those numbers, this one a couple percent, this one, this one, this one, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just changed everything about my business.
yeah, exactly. Like 5%, 5%, 5%. That gets you close to actually a 15% improvement on your top line, for example, not 5. So there's that multiplicative effect that definitely happens and moves the needle in a big way on that side.
I think this actually ties back to Josh and Tersh. You mentioned earlier on the podcast, like what's the difference between a 5 to 12% company and a 20% company? Really, a lot of it just kind of goes back to the case study that Raymond just talked about. I mean, there was just kind of a massive mind shift in that company where in the past they were basically, hey, we're growing, everything's fine. Then all of a sudden, when it stopped being fine, they kind of had to have a major shift and realize that we need to change the way we're doing things. It's like they went through line by line and realized, all right, here's what our overhead expense should be, and kind of from that point on, that they just tracked it and said if it went above that, they know why, and it's like, okay, that's fine for this month, or if it exceeded it, that they cut it out right away, kind of nip the problem in the bud. I mean, kind of to your point, Josh, with 5% increase in booking rate, 5% increase in average ticket, basically if you just lay out the plan company wide, kind of operations and spec wise, really just track against it every month. That's honestly the biggest difference between companies hitting 20% and the ones that aren't, is that, there's a lot of the small changes that can add up to, get 1% here, 1% there. Pretty soon you're pushing upper teens, 20%. And on the months you miss, specifically where you missed, and then you can address that problem. So it doesn't kind of fester and kind of, leave your business running in the single digits profit margin for a year or two before you realize there's actually a problem.
I was just going to add, you mentioned like the little tweaks everywhere. There was, I think we were at a BDR event or something where someone told us, Tommy Mello was talking to this guy about booking rates, and he knew, and this gets to the level of sophistication at a certain point where a 1% increase in his booking rate was $3 million to his company. And like to that level, you think about that. Obviously that scales down to all sizes, but generally speaking, a company that's really dialed in, 1% can make a huge difference, but most companies have way more meat on that bone that they can improve upon. And they just don't know because they're not tracking it properly. Like, this is a much deeper discussion of things, but data inside of CRMs is not accurate. It's not even really close to accurate most of the time because people don't know how to, I don't remember if it was Matthew or Raymond mentioned, like, one of the most important things you do is the CRM you're using, make sure you're using it properly. So you actually have an accurate number to go off of, because otherwise you're making decisions on half-baked data. And now you don't even know what's true. So you're trying to optimize for something you don't even know if you need to optimize for. And I think that was smart that you guys brought that up, is like, there's so many tweaks and things, and it's really hard to do yourself. And I know people don't always want to spend money on consultants or outside services and stuff, but there's so many things that you can get to the answer a lot faster when you hire people that do this for every single day. And I think that's the key for people thinking about this.
And that's the nice thing. I mean, we try to leverage, the data that we have from the clients that we work with, right, to figure out what's working, what's not, what are kind of the benchmarks we should be using. This is kind of going, full circle, right, which is like the most important, the biggest favor you can do for yourself as a business owner in this industry is figuring out exactly like what you need to be doing, right? Like, what are the action items to do? Because firstly, oftentimes like the problem has been solved by someone already in another market. So you just need to copy what that guy did as a starting point. But then secondly, like, oftentimes the fix, like it's a pretty quick fix, it takes some figuring out to do, but once you implement it, like, you get the gain pretty quickly. And that's like, honestly, one of our really like, secrets is that like you go through every month a list of action items, and if you just execute every single month, you can change your business from a 5% business to a 20% business in like a 6 to 12 month period. It's not like it takes you years to do. That might be the case in some other industry, but here is literally just figure out what you need to do and then go do it. And then like you're going to be running a lot better business. And that's, ultimately what it comes down to. So I'd say like the biggest favor a business owner can do is really, acquiring that knowledge specifically for their business around, where they are today, what they need to be doing. And then lastly is just, is executing.
I love that. Where can people reach out to you guys to have a conversation if they want to?
Absolutely. We can be reached out at profitabilitypartners.io. Profitability partners, partners ending with an S, just to be clear. And then, they can just click our book button, and then we'll set up a call directly with them. And on that call, like what we like to do with all our clients is just go through their financials together and figure out like what are the 3 to 5 low-hanging fruit within your business, because unless you're running at 20% and you're growing very rapidly, oftentimes there is something to do. And we like to make sure that, hey, like, anytime someone works with us, there is a two-way benefit before we start actually the relationship.
Just knowing the 3 to 5 things would be worth the call to me, just so at least like, hey, I'm gonna go work on one of these things right now.
Yeah.
But this was awesome. I know when you get into numbers and P&Ls, you can go so many directions with a conversation, and there's like, we're still barely scratching the surface of how deep this goes. And I say that knowing we did a tech stack audit from my company with our leadership team, and I'm the one that signed up for all these tools. So I felt like I was literally getting like a colonoscopy, because I was like, what's this one for? And I'm like, I don't remember. Like,
This job.
oh, cancel that one. Cancel. Like, so I had my team hold me accountable for that, because I'm like, oh, I signed up for that one. We might need one in the future. I don't want to cancel it. And they're like, no, we're canceling it. So, but really good stuff today, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on here and share. This is some really good information for contractors that are going to listen to this episode. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for any additional resources people want to, if they want to really kind of dig in themselves, we also have like an encyclopedic amount of information in our insights that Matthew and I put together. For any reading, looking to learn more about the benchmarks, data points, we have all of that on our site as well.
Oh, that's good.
Appreciate Joe. If anybody has any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to the team. And until we talk again next time, we hope you have a safe and wonderful week. See you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks
for having us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.